So, given the recent internal elections in Venezuela that the regime chose not to validate, what do you think? What is the role that the international community should play?
Well, I think that what the international community needs to do is to recognize what happened. I mean, of course, the regime is trying to deny the reality, but you cannot cancel the reality. The huge turnout that we had is an evidence about the real will from the people in terms to a political change. So we have more than 2 million people that went to the streets to vote, and of course we got a new leadership in the opposition that won with 92%, so that's huge. So I think that the international community needs to recognize these results and of course to support this new leadership, not only as the candidate, that is in our case Maria Corina Machado, the candidate will face Maduro in the presidential election next year. That of course is an election that we need to fight for, electoral conditions, but also to recognize her as the new leadership and as the new interlocutor with the international community in terms of aligned, interests, stakeholders, and all the people that could be involved in a political solution. In fact, I think that the international community can do many things, not only in terms to push in order to get free and fair elections, for example, to allow Venezuelans abroad to participate in the election, of course, to have an election under the concept of electoral integrity, that is important, transparent and fair elections, and of course, in terms of electoral observation mission in the country. That are part of the things that we can do, and of course we can advocate in terms of international community. And of course, and it's important, it's to maintain the attention on Venezuela, not only about the political situation, but also the human rights situation, because we know that the regime is violating systematically human rights. As we speak, there are people that is being tortured by the regime, and at the same time, this is a regime that is being investigated by the International Crime Court for committing crimes against humanity. So I think that there are many things that we can do and we can advocate for. So the thing is that we need to understand that we have an opportunity for next year. We can achieve free and fair elections, but this will be only possible with the international community involved and pushing on that way.
And what do you think should the European Union as an actor do, especially in order to support the civil liberties of Venezuelan people?
Well, Europe, it's really important. It's a key actor. As you know, the European Union sanctioned the regime for violation of human rights, official individuals from the regime. So I think that we have many things that in which we can convince Europe to be involved in Venezuela. The first is about to maintain this pressure in terms of sanctions and in terms of, keep the eye on the people that has been violating human rights and has been involved with this kind of crimes. Of course, the electoral expertise that the European Union has would be really important for us. So if we can get an electoral observation mission next year from the European Union, that should be important for the work and the objective we have to get free and fair elections. And of course, to maintain the discussion on all the European levels on the importance of, considering that of course we have a really complicated region, not only with Cuba and Nicaragua, how Venezuela can be a big opportunity not only to regain freedom and democracy in the country, but at the same time to help these other countries and these other contexts in terms of recover democracy. And of course, I think that we have different levels in Europe and the European Union to get involved, not only about financial issues, political issues, the parliamentary issues with the European Parliament, but I think that we need to be aligned in the idea of the opportunity and the necessity we have to get free and fair elections next year and to push in all the possible ways in that objective.
And coming back to the recent internal elections, what do the results mean for Vente, especially?
Well, of course, it's a huge turnout for our party. It's a huge result, and of course it's a huge responsibility, not only in terms of our political project that is called Venezuela Tierra de Gracia, which is the first liberal program to be implemented in the contemporary history in our country. But at the same time, I think it's important because now we need to act with a sense of open to many actors. I mean, this is not only about Vente. Of course, we have the main leadership now. We have the main political party. We are the first political force strength in the country, but that's not enough to defeat a regime as we are facing. So now we need a broader coalition. So we are calling and asking for other actors in terms to incorporate in the decision-making process and the discussion on the strategy. And of course, try to convince not only parties but civil society organizations that want to defeat the regime next year and that are really committed to this objective in order to create a huge coalition, not only from parties but also with these NGOs and other sectors. And of course, to be like the more proactive that we can. I mean, it's not only to react or not only to respond, but it's also to show the people that there is an option, there is a project, there is an alternative, and there is a will to fight. So yeah, for Vente is a huge victory. It's a consolidation of a liberal project in Venezuela, but in Latin America. We have a female leader, liberal leader, which is a really good news for the region and for us as a country. But this is not enough. I mean, and we need to understand that the regime we are facing, and this is not about ideology, it's about a system. So we need to defeat the system with a huge democratic coalition, and we are working on that.
So you already touched upon the topic, but I want to ask a little bit more specific. What do you think are the next important steps and actions that need to be taken in order to protect the civil liberties of the Venezuelan people?
Well, as you know, as we speak, there are many things happening in terms of agreements between the regime and a part of the opposition, and some agreements on, for example, to get free political prisoners, and of course to discuss about electoral conditions. But the first and most important thing we need to find this moment is to work, for example, in the idea of all the political leaders that could participate in the election. Of course, Maria Corina, as the new leader, that she has been illegally disqualified by the regime, so we need to fight in terms to dismantle this arbitrary measure. But not only about her, about all the political leaders in the country that could be able to run in a free election. And of course, we need to think in to get free these political prisoners, and we need to discuss the electoral integrity and the electoral conditions for next year. And of course, starting from when the election will be, because we don't have certainty about when this election. It's supposed to be next year, by the end of next year, but we don't have a date yet. So it's important to define this. And of course, to define the mechanisms for electoral observation, international electoral observation, not only from Europe, but also, for example, for Central Carter in the US, and other organizations that work with electoral observation. And one important thing, and that also could be important for Europe, but also for Latin American governments and countries, is how we will allow to Venezuelans abroad to vote. Because as you know, we have probably the most important migrant crisis in the world, and the biggest, with 8 million people abroad. This represents like 25% of our population. It's huge. And the worst thing is that at least the half of these people, they are not allowed to vote. So we need to guarantee not only to Venezuelans in the country to vote in a free way, but also to allow these Venezuelans abroad that they could participate in the election. So we need to push in that way in terms to open the register to Venezuelans abroad so they can participate in the election. and of course to work in other guarantees like identity rights. I mean, to get your ID or your passport in order to register, and of course in order to facilitate an election with under this concept of integrity, electoral integrity. So yeah, I think there are many things we can do, but the most important thing is to maintain the pressure on the regime in terms to the need to make these agreements work, and of course in terms to maintain the attention on what's going on in the country. So everything that you could do in terms to maintain the attention, to raise the voice and to show what's going on, and the most important thing, to recognize the new leadership and this huge epic the victory that represents the Venezuelan society participating in the primary of the last October 22, and recognize this result. All the things that we can do in that way could help in this new stage of fight. And so yes, that's I think what we can do. And of course, I think it's important to even get closer between Europe and Latin America in terms to create awareness on the risks that we are facing, like populism, authoritarian regimes, but the importance to defend democracy worldwide.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for us from FNF to have you here with us in Brussels, and all the best to you and of course also to Venezuela.
No, thank you for having me, and thank you for your support. It's really important, and we hope that next year we could have a free and democratic country again, and you can go there to visit us. So thank you.